Now I'd like to introduce Lisa Liotta from the Hollywood CRA to tell us about what's going on in Hollywood.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Lisa Liotta, and I'm the Redevelopment and Operations Manager for the Hollywood CRA, and I also wear another hat. I'm the Development Officer for the City of Hollywood. So we're going to talk about the CRA today, but before we go any further, I do want to recognize someone very special and someone who is a good friend of mine. She passed away a few years ago, but I have a feeling many of you know her. And I always remember her birthday because it's one of my favorite days of the year for many other reasons, but having her birthday on the same day was no surprise when I found out, and that's Elsie Johns.
Yeah.
Today is Elsie's birthday.
Wow.
I believe she would have been 104 years old today. So we miss Elsie, but we know she's always with us. With that, I'm going to start off by asking a question. So by show of hands, how many of you feel as though you know what a CRA is and what a CRA does, what Community Redevelopment Agency that is? Okay, well, some do, and some of you are honest and say you don't. Let's get started because I'm going to give a little bit of a CRA 101, and the acronym CRA, once again, Community Redevelopment Agency. So, in 1969, the Florida Redevelopment Act was passed, and then in 1977, tax increment financing, which is also known as TIF, another acronym, was adopted into law. So you hear the acronym TIF used quite often when people discuss CRAs. And I'm going to tell you exactly what TIF is, so in the future you'll know what it means. TIF is a method of funding redevelopment projects where the local government allocates a portion of the increased tax revenue generated, that's the ad valorem tax revenue, generated by development within the CRA district back into that specific area. So a CRA district has geographic boundaries. And unlike the rest of the city, where you pay your taxes and a portion of them go into the city's general fund, in a CRA district, a portion of the general fund dollars go to the CRA as an entity, as a fund, quite frankly, to reinvest in that specific area. And the increased revenue is based on the year the district was established. So as we move forward, this might make more sense. So in Hollywood, we created, in 1979, we established the downtown district. As of October 1st this year, that district will be TIF-less. And as of September 30th, 2030, that's when the CRA, the downtown district, sunsets. The beach district was established in 1997, and it sunsets on June 30th, 2027. The way I always can remember this is because you just basically invert the numbers, 79, 97, it's pretty easy to remember. The CRA is governed under Florida State Statute Chapter 163.3, and it's really a coveted opportunity that provides the city with access to funds that would otherwise be collected by outside taxing entities for the purpose of eradicating slum and blight conditions as identified in the redevelopment plan for each district. So do we want to stop? If anyone has questions, you can just raise your hand and I can field questions as we go on, as opposed to waiting to the end, because the content of this presentation changes drastically. So Andy, Andy, your
Can I ask
question.
a quick question about
federal government, because I know that this is available in other cities and other states. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, for instance, and we had several CRAs operating in our city. So is there any federal government involvement?
State, it's governed under the state statute. And ladies,
What is
Tiff, one more time. Okay, so it's tax increment financing. So I'll give an example. In downtown, which the CRA was established in 1979, we'll just use round numbers. Let's say the ad valorem taxes that were collected were $1,000, okay? A portion, and so then in 1980 or 81, we'll say, those taxes went up to $1,200, okay? A portion of that extra $200 would be segregated and given to, and put into the CRA trust fund to be reinvested into that specific area. The rest of that money, let's just call it $1,050, would go into go to the taxing districts, including the city.
When you say TIF, that means at an end and sunset?
Well,
ends also?
Well, yes, okay, so when we go TIFless, that means we stop getting those tax increment funding. However, the county made a deal with the city for the CRA not to be extended again. And the county said, and I'm just gonna generalize, we'll give you $3 million per year. However, you have to sunset by 2030. So instead of the CRA taking however many millions of dollars technically that the county would have normally received, they said, we'll give you $3 million and you can use that money between 2025 and 2030. That's correct. Then it ends. CRAs are created for a specific period of time to complete a specific job, and that is to eliminate slum and blight. Yes, ma'am.
Are there only two, obviously there are only two districts, why, and what do they, I don't know if you can tell us, encompass? Like the downtown district would be from where to where,
Okay.
and that be?
We are going to get there. I do have a map coming up shortly, and that's a decision that the taxing authorities made. There could be more districts, theoretically, not at this time, but there could have been more districts. But between the city and the county and the taxing authorities, they determined that the downtown in specific geographic areas, as well as the beach, were appropriate. They met the legal requirements to create a CRA. Some municipalities have more than two, some have one, some have five. So, yes, sir.
Is there an annual financial report online we can look at?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's we're governed under state statute, so we do have strict requirements as far as financial reporting and budgeting. And we have very strict guidelines as to what we can spend the money on, and that has changed over the years. I saw another hands kind of going up and down, so anybody? Okay, we'll go on. And honestly, if something doesn't make sense, please let me know, because I do want to be able to explain this. So, as I mentioned, the CRAs, community redevelopment agencies, whether in Hollywood or elsewhere in the state, are governed under Section 163, Part 3 of the Florida State Statute. And what was interesting is these statutes change. As we know, different laws are changed over the years. And on October 1st, 2019, the law changed and basically was codified to read that CRAs may only expend funds in the redevelopment trust fund for the following purposes. So we called our trust funds, that's our budget. And they're very limited. They changed what we were allowed to spend money on. The first one is administrative and overhead expenses necessary to implement the redevelopment plan. expenses for redevelopment planning, surveys, and financial analysis, the acquisition of real property in the redevelopment area, the clearance and preparation of a development site, the repayment of principal and interest or any redemption premium for any form of indebtedness. All expenses incidental or connected with the issuance, sale, redemption, retirement, or purchase of bonds, bond anticipated notes, or any form of indebtedness, and the development of affordable housing within the community redevelopment area, the development of community policing innovations, and there's only one more. So we only can spend money on these 9 things, and expenses that are necessary to exercise powers granted under 163-370, including the dissemination of slum clearance and community redevelopment information, installation, construction, or reconstruction of streets, utilities, parks, and playgrounds, carrying out plans for a program of voluntary or compulsory repair and rehabilitation of buildings or their other improvements in accordance with the community redevelopment plan. And those are some of what we can spend our money on. And the reason I kind of like extracted these is because for many years, the CRA had been paying for many things that did not fall into the first 8. Advertising, special events, a lot of marketing. All of that has been eliminated, unless we say it's the dissemination of information related to slum, to the eradication of slum and blight and redevelopment. So the last one, C, covers our grant programs. Grant programs to improve property, privately owned property. So there was some news recently about CRA's, the laws, the statutes changing once again, right? So this came up, and that was SB 1242 and HB 991. They were tabled indefinitely, but there was a lot of clamor in the CRA world and municipalities about these bills because they stated that all CRAs had to be eliminated by 2045, and they also prohibited, these bills prohibited any new projects as of October 1st, 2025. Basically, if passed, these bills would strip millions of dollars from local redevelopment and revitalization efforts, stall projects that build affordable housing and revamp struggling areas, eliminate opportunities for small businesses and local job creation, and hinder local governments, leaving them unable to invest in the most vulnerable areas of their own communities. So that was tabled indefinitely. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts here. The downtown district of the CRA is approximately 580 acres. And as you can see from this map, the boundaries are between Washington Street to the south, 22nd Avenue to the west, Johnson Street to the north, and then it has more of like a jagged edge on the eastern boundary, which is 14th Avenue from Johnson Street south to Polk Street, 16th Avenue from Polk Street to Van Buren Street, and 17th Avenue from Van Buren Street to Washington Street. So that's the downtown district. Does anyone have any questions?
I've got a small question.
Yes.
Where they're working on, they just put a new building on Polk and Tyler Street, over the railroad tracks going west. They put that new building there. The construction workers that did that building, they ruined the sidewalk on the south side of the street. Now they've planted palm trees there instead of fixing the sidewalk.
I do believe that's outside the CRA district. It's
Looks like it's right
22nd. You said Polk?
Yeah, Polk and Tyler, where they meet, where you come over the railroad tracks.
So you go over the railroad tracks. Are you on?
Is it east or west of the railroad tracks?
Going on going over the railroad tracks at Tyler, it turns into Polk. This Polk comes this way.
Correct.
That's west of,
This-
Are we heading west or east?
I'm heading
that's west of
Right.
Dixie
So
Island.
is that west, yes, so I'm.
It's west. 22nd Avenue is kind of like this avenue that doesn't exist in most locations. So, right, right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Blattner, do you, okay, do you agree? Okay. Steve?
So I just have a question. Just looking at this map, it seems the next place that really needs slum and blight help is Dixie Highway to City Hall. Is there any future of maybe another CRA being established for that area?
No, I don't. There hasn't been any discussion. And actually, the county, because of the agreement that the city signed with the county about, they're not enthusiastic about another CRA. Yes, ma'am?
I was confused because the two bills that you said were in the Florida Senate and the Florida House, I thought you said that they haven't passed.
That's correct.
Okay, so are they expected to pass and eliminate all these CRAs? or-
They're tabled indefinitely. That
So
is
that's
how.
a good thing?
Well, we think that's a good thing. You know,
Okay.
that's my opinion. It's a good thing. And yes,
There was something, I went through this about policing.
Yes.
What does that mean?
isn't that interesting? Yes. Interestingly enough, CRAs are legally allowed to fund policing initiatives. And that means that the way the Hollywood CRA utilizes that ability, that benefit is that we pay for overlays of police in both districts. So in addition to the police that are assigned to areas all over the city, the CRA pays a significant amount, quite frankly. I will tell you, it's about $8 million on the beach for additional police officers. And I want to say about 3 or 4 million downtown, so that we always have coverage, additional coverage in these areas. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hollywood Boulevard, where you widen the sidewalks, was that covered, when the property, each property is different, that was affected by the widening? How do you divide up the taxable revenue?
Well, that was a project that, the only area that was affected is publicly owned land. So the city technically owns the land where all of that work was performed. So the funding comes in as a pool. It's not you gave $10, you gave 15, or what have you. Especially am I answering your question? Is that what you mean, where we actually know how much each property owner?
Well, I'm sure the asset value went up on each property.
Oh, right. Well, we like to think the purpose of the CRA is, to eliminate slum and blight, and in doing so, we do increase property value.
Well, the only objection I had is the change in the parking, with a complete elimination of handicap parking and things like that.
Right. Well, it wasn't completely eliminated because the city engineer actually governs the handicap, the public right of way. So I agree with you. There was it's a fact. We did lose parking on the street. It's one of the prices that was paid to increase, the sidewalks and improve the area. And we are working with the city, the Division of Parking, to create additional public parking. And, whether it's working with the private sector or activating city-owned property. Yes, sir.
Once the CRA on the beach is closed,
Sunsets.
where does the money come for the extra policing on the beach?
That's a good question, because when you think about it, the money that comes into the CRA is a portion of the money that would have gone to the general fund. And because of the redevelopment and the property values going up and the transfer of property, the taxes have gone up significantly over the years. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but to answer your question, the money will, so the CRA, when it sunsets, it returns the money. The next year, that money goes to the taxing districts, and the general fund is, the city is one of those taxing districts. It's the largest one, matter of fact. So the money that theoretically, if the city chooses to continue with the additional layer of police, they would pay for it, they would fund it. With the money that theoretically, with or without the money that would they be getting after the CRA sunset. So the purpose of the CRA is to eliminate slum and blight and increase the value of the property, which in turn increases the tax value, especially with commercial property, which isn't homesteaded, right? So the CRA goes in for a period of time, cleans up an area, and then returns it to the other taxing districts. And in returning it, they're returning it at a higher value. So it's almost like starting a business, building the business up, and then handing it back to those taxing authorities. Meaning, I'm going to say primarily the city and the county. Is that making sense? Okay. So here we have the Beach CRA District. It's about 293 acres, and it's from Sherman Street down to the property line at the Diplomat, including the Diplomat. And of course, the boundary on the east is the Atlantic Ocean, and the Intracoastal Waterway is on the west side. Yes, Steve?
I heard there were some talk about the Broadwalk being extended to the Diplomat. Would that be a CRA project? And did I hear just nothing?
There was some discussion. And it would be if it. Right now, our budget. I'll get into our budget a little bit too. If the CRA board chooses, it would be eligible. If that's the choice. Did I skip?
Where does the boardwalk end now?
Georgia Street.
Like Summit.
Right there. So, the downtown CRA and the beach CRA are tasked with implementing goals and objectives as outlined in each of the corresponding redevelopment plans pursuant to the statute. The downtown redevelopment plan was adopted in 1979, and then it was recently amended and reinstated in 2019. The beach redevelopment plan was adopted in 1997 and then formally summarized in 2003. So, formula for CRA success is public investment creating a catalyst for private investment. Because when you think about it, when a city improves its public property, it attracts people, investors, residents, developers, businesses. Looking back a few years, this is from 1923. This is Hollywood Boulevard looking east. I'm sure many of you have seen this with the Historical Society. And here we are in the 1970s. It's looking west. Very different. Looking east on Hollywood Boulevard circa 2000. It's right over the tracks and now looking west in 2024.
Little different.
Yeah. Take a look at that again.
Excuse me, I had a question.
Yes.
Is the CRE doing anything for affordable housing for young people?
Affordable housing, yes. not specific for young people, but affordable housing.
Right.
Buildings over there on the right, those are affordable housing.
We have new affordable housing, and I have a picture of one of them, and you'll see.
Okay.
But yes, we are definitely pro affordable housing. The housing market has changed. We've seen a lot of changes even over the past couple of years. For many years, only condos were being built, and people kind of thumbed their nose at the idea of building apartments. Then that changed completely, and then suddenly everyone's building apartments, no one's building condos, and now we're seeing a little bit of a change again, where condos are coming back, new condominiums are being built. So we refer to capital projects. Those are the projects that are on public property, such as the streetscape, the widening of the sidewalks, the new landscape, the new lighting. These are all capital projects. The Broadwalk was a capital project. It's on public property, improvements to public property. So
Yeah.
we've been discussing the streetscape, the widened sidewalks, the new landscape, the new lighting. In addition, what you don't see is the underground utilities that had to be completely redone as well. And really it was the underground utilities that, regardless of a streetscape project, had to happen. So underground utilities would have come in and basically torn up the street for quite a period of time, because that was the longest element of, when you're underground, you really don't know, sometimes the mappings are not correct and you don't know what you're gonna find. All in all, it worked out quite well, and we were able to utilize that time schedule with utilities so that we were able to work on the beautification while they were already opening. It's kind of like opening up the patient and doing multiple surgeries. Just another angle of the streetscape. And one more, you'll see also the downtown gateway sign. And I really didn't include, I will tell you that there have been many other capital improvements in downtown. I focused really on this recent streetscape. Harrison Street will go under construction, nowhere near like what happened on Hollywood Boulevard, but they'll look related. It won't take as long. We don't have to redo the utilities. There was a time also we've widened sidewalks on 20th Avenue. It used to have a turning lane. That goes back about 20 years ago. It was one of the first projects that I worked on. And of course, the reconfiguration of Young Circle. There was an allocation of funds from the CRA that went into that, although that was really a city project. As far as the private sector, we'll look at a few different buildings that have already come out of the ground, are planned, or are planned to. So if you have been in downtown Hollywood, and actually, just by a show of hands, who has been in downtown Hollywood over the past, let's say, 2 weeks? Okay. How about, someone hasn't been there in 2 months? Okay, maybe 2 years? No, okay. Okay. Okay, well, 1818 Park is that building that was in the other picture that we showed of Hollywood Boulevard 2024 looking westbound. That is where, and you can see, it is where the Great Southern was located and then reconstructed. It has 273 residential units and approximately 30,000 square feet of commercial space. 9 Hollywood is at 320 South Federal Highway, and that has 204 residential units and 7,000 square feet of commercial space. So these exist. These are out there. These are real photos.
My question, are these, I assume none of these are workforce or affordable housing, right?
These are not, however, I will show you 1 or 2 that are.
And these are condos or apartments?
These are apartments. These are apartments right now. Now, I will tell you, I've seen it. I've seen an apartment turn into a condominium. I've actually seen a condominium turn into an apartment. Not an easy task, I will say, when you have to buy every owner out and then switch it over. But I did see that once. Yes, ma'am.
I know that where the Great Southern was, has a food hall,
Yes.
but hardly anybody knows about it. It's not marketed very well.
Yes.
Who's in charge of doing that?
The private owner, and we try to work with, give good advice. We can't get into advertising private entities. However, we are working with them to see if there are any improvements that could be made that we could legally use CRA funds to help them with. That food hall owner does own another food hall in Fort Lauderdale. This is not his first business venture. And they're making some changes, I will tell you. They had many different vendors inside the food hall. I think they're going to start limiting. I know there's discussion. I know they're going to have different, I think larger vendors and fewer of them. We'll see what happens. So, yes, ma'am.
I was riding in the circuit with somebody who lives there,
Uh-huh.
and I asked them about the food hall,
Uh-huh.
and they said, we're gonna go there 1 week, and the next week those people are gonna be gone, because they're just changing and changing and changing.
Yeah, well, they all have leases. So, this is a private business that someone is running. So they sign up, they get their tenants and they do sign leases. And maybe they stay a year, maybe they stay 2 years, maybe they stay 20 years. It's really a private relationship, life would be a lot easier if we owned everything and we were able to manage it, quite frankly, but that's not the case. It's not a single owner downtown, and that's one of the biggest challenges. We deal with so many different personalities and so many different owners. Some inherited and their grandfather bought 60 years ago. Another guy just bought at the highest possible price point. So the rents also are across the board. It's up to the individual who owns the landlord to cut the deal with the tenant. Yes, sir.
No, one thing that really bothers me, all the increase in paved area here. There's no mitigation as far as stormwater goes. Everything goes down to the lakes, South Lake and North Lake. And my observation is that we have more flooding due to the redevelopment where they didn't put anything in for drainage.
Well, I will tell you that the capital improvement project, when we did the pavers, all the engineering improved the flooding in downtown. I don't think downtown, the historic core, is contributing to the flooding in the lakes. I will tell you, I live in the lakes. I think I live at ground zero where the flooding is. I mean, it just barely rains, and I've got a swimming pool in my intersection. I'm at 14th and Monroe. It's pretty rough. So it's rough. As far as, there are a lot of, I believe there are many other elements adding to the flooding. I agree with you that every plan, and the city is also very strict as far as mitigation and stormwater. So, there might be, but I think there are many other factors. I mean, because I don't have any development in my, where I am, and I'm still literally underwater every time it rains. It's coming up, it's coming down, it's coming every direction at me.
Well, as far as mitigation, can't the CRA contribute to the lakes area? All the stormwater pumps have to be upgraded to handle the volume.
Unfortunately, no, because we have geographic boundaries, and we cannot step outside of the geographic boundary. So, but the good news is because of the increased taxes and the revenue that will go back to the city, that will give more funding to the city to address such matters. That gets a little complicated too, because utilities is an enterprise fund, but there's money coming in that hopefully will be able to mitigate that for both you and me. Anyone else? So we'll look at.
We didn't talk about traffic. Now, before all this went on, traffic was terrible. You add all these people, it gets worse. Fort Lauderdale is a nightmare. They keep building and building. I don't know what's gonna happen there.
Traffic is challenging, you know, some people think
And the
traffic.
bicycle lane is not the answer, because we won't go on the bicycle.
Right.
I won't go on a bicycle
I think-
lane. I do a sidewalk.
Right.
Except
Public transportation, things like the Circuit and the Holly Go will help, but I think it's up to all of us, maybe not to drive whenever we don't have to. I know sometimes that's not even a choice, but
where it's Florida, where it's so hot, you can't wait for a bus for 5 minutes.
I understand. No, I agree. I understand, but one of the challenges, we're really looking at the downtown, which is a commercial district. And, you know, for years, people have complained that the businesses are dying, no one goes there, and this is before there were serious traffic issues. So I will tell you that the commercial district needs people, and I'm not as worried about traffic as I am parking, quite frankly. So we encourage people to use rideshare. We encourage people not to take their car. I know living in South Florida, we are so car-centric. We drive everywhere. It's hot, we're used to it, we're used to parking in a flat lot or right in front. Now we have competition with that, and we're in traffic, but traffic isn't necessarily, traffic means more people are in our area, and hopefully they're patronizing our businesses to keep them alive. It does have the downfall. I don't think anyone likes traffic, but, you know.
Are those new buildings that they built, like at Dixie Highway and Tyler and Hollywood Boulevard, is that gonna be public parking in there?
We're gonna get there. So all of these buildings, they park themselves and they're commercial. And they're commercial property. So they park their tenants.
Yeah.
Hollywood Heights, which is also on Hollywood Boulevard, where the SunTrust building used to be. And then, of course, we have the Bread Building. Now that Hollywood Heights is done, the Bread Building is still under construction. And I'm going to tell you, the Bread Building, they saved the sign. And the developer is going to do something, and I'm not at liberty to say what it is, but something very Bread Building oriented. I know that they have literally scoured eBay looking for Bread Building stuff, old advertisements or any promotional item from the Bread Building. So they're trying to honor the Bread Building as much as possible. So. And just gonna go back to that. I told you where I live, so I live really close to this, and I have to say, you know, as much as we get attached to what was, prior to this development, what was pretty scary. What was a frequent stop for the police. What was people who you wouldn't want to live next to you or even be near you, hanging out, breaking into the Bread Building. Kids also, which was really scary, breaking in, and it was, development eradicates that type of activity, and it wasn't, the Bread Building, if you ever went into the parking garage, totally, I don't even know if it ever functioned. You'd have to literally like drive a DeLorean, like the flattest car. It was so low just to even go up the ramps. It was rough. It was rough. So Celeste, 2001, Van Buren, and 2000, Van Buren, they are facing each other right on the corner of Van Buren and 20th. They are under construction. And probably they move very, very quickly. So here we have Hollywood Heights, which was Celeste Hollywood. So the Celeste name, it's the estate companies, and they come in and they've invested a tremendous amount of money in downtown Hollywood, which tells me that they have confidence. So here are their two of their other projects. And now,
There's a parking lot.
okay,
I wouldn't want to walk from that end of the building to go park my car way up over there.
well, it's all kind of connected, but the Tropic is workforce housing. University Station, also that workforce, affordable, attainable housing product. University Station is actually situated on city-owned land. The Tropic, private. Yes, Steve?
University Station, is that, I think it's named because there's a potential for an actual local train stop?
That is correct.
Does the CRA have anything to do with that
No, not
endeavor?
at this time, no. But yes, the commuter rail, the Broward commuter rail, not the Tri-Rail, but the Broward commuter rail, we anticipate to be on the tracks. Yes,
That was going to be right.
no.
Is Dixie Highway 21st or what is?
No, Dixie Highway, 21st Avenue is northbound. Dixie Highway, so 21st Avenue is on the east side of the tracks, and Dixie Highway is on the west side of the tracks.
Okay.
So a lot of times people mix them up and they'll say Dixie Highway, but they mean 21st Avenue, but it's 21st Avenue.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to move on. Does anyone have any questions about downtown? Yes,
I
ma'am.
did have one. With us trying to make it so much more user-friendly, two things that we've noticed since we moved here is it's mainly bars and restaurants down there. And with all the new sidewalk, which is pretty, there's no seating anywhere except at the private restaurants. Was there a conscious decision not to have any kind of benches anywhere?
Deter the homeless.
Yeah. And someone else who, I think Steve, did you say that? Okay. We unfortunately have had some challenges with benches being used to sleep on, even with dividers. And in working with the police department, the police asked us not to include the benches at this time. We do have benches. We have them in storage, and I'm hoping that there will be a time, sometime very soon, where we'll be able to install them. But you are correct. We do have only the private sector. In regard to the bars and restaurants, once again, the city and the CRA do not own any of these properties, so it's up to, if you owned a property in downtown Hollywood and you were leasing it, you have to lease it to a business. One would think you would want to lease it to a business that would be able to pay the rent and thrive. I think we're oversaturated with food and beverage. I know we are, quite frankly, but I don't own any of those properties. I asked the owners to please be very selective, but I'm not a party to the lease.
Well, and I understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
we all get return on investment, or if we don't get it, we're not very bright. But is there anything that the city does to possibly encourage other businesses? Any kind of,
Well, it's
incentives?
market driven, it's really market driven. So, like, everyone wants Trader Joe's, everybody wants, but Trader Joe's goes where Trader Joe's wants to go. We can't tell them. So when I say we do have incentives, the CRA has incentives for capital improvements because we're allowed to with the state statute, right? So we have these 9 things we can do, and one is to give grants for capital improvements. So if you owned a property in downtown Hollywood and you wanted to upgrade it, or your tenant wanted to upgrade it, we would work with you and provide you with a grant that would offset your expenses. As far as tenant selection, we provide data and statistics and encourage other types of tenants. We're looking for that experiential tenant. I will tell you one of the greatest successes, and if you haven't been there, I'm actually, in addition to the pens and the little booklets I left in the back, I'm going to give everybody a ticket to Cinema Paradiso because we were able to negotiate with the previous property owner to lease to Cinema Paradiso, and they've been there for over 10 years. It's a fine line. We can't strong arm a property owner. We can only tell them how beneficial it would be for the community, especially if they own other properties. So, you know, with certain types of business comes possibly crime, or other types of activities that we don't want to see. So we try to encourage all the landlords to lease to tenants who will not be problematic. And the experiential tenants like Cinema Paradiso was one of our greatest success stories, but it's not easy. We did own a property a number of years ago, which is currently, we were able to sell that to Borough, which is the shared office space. If you haven't been there, it's 2031 Harrison Street. It's beautiful. If you're looking for office space, we went out what we call an RFP, request for proposals, and Borough at that time won the RFP, and we ended up selling the building to them, and they completely dumped a tremendous amount of money in it, and now it's filled with office tenants. We love our office tenants because they go out to lunch, and they like to live close by, and they go out to dinner, and the office market really does help all downtowns. So yes, we try to encourage them, but there's only so much we can do.
Well,
Yeah.
I realize that. I was
Right.
actually kind of asking if there are incentives for particular kinds of businesses, not necessarily, and what you've answered is there's an incentive for whatever kind of business.
Right, well, to improve the property,
Right, well-
and if they're going to put in a tenant, the grants go before the CRA board, which I failed to mention is actually the mayor and the commissioners wearing their CRA board hats. So any grant that's significant goes, which is anything over typically we would say over $25,000, and each grant for each folio is up to $75,000, but it's a matching grant. So you have to first you spend $150, and then after all the calculations and double checking your receipts and making sure everyone got paid, you will get reimbursed. But if you're going to put tenant XYZ, that is notoriously horrible for any community, there's a very slim chance you're going to get a grant. Not to mention, the zoning does not allow for certain tenants or has separation clauses. Does anyone have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Just wondering, where is the office of the CRA? Is it in the?
It's in the downtown district, yes. So I actually have two offices because I wear my two hats. So 1948 Harrison Street, which is a building that has flamingos painted all over it. It's immediately north of the public parking garage on 20th and Van Buren. That is the CRA office. And we take walk-ins, and we keep the same hours as the city, which is 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Thursday. However, many of us are in the office on Fridays as well. I take appointments on Fridays. I take appointments on Saturdays and Sundays. But, because we do want to get the job done. We want to do a really good job. So, let's go to the beach now. Okay, this is quite the list. This is a list of some of the public investment, the CRA capital improvement projects on the beach. We're starting off with the Broad Walk, which at that time was $13 million. Water and sewer for 52 blocks, $12 million. The east-west streetscape undergrounding of overhead utilities, that was phase 1 and phase 2, I'm sorry, because there's a total of 4 phases, and we're currently on phase 4. $16 million. Garfield parking garage, Tarno Park, and community center, $20 million. The bridge renovation, that was many years ago, that was $1 million. Beach renourishment, $3.4 million. More beach renourishment at $1.5 million. $500,000 for the dune mitigation. And so approximately $67.4 million has been spent in capital improvements. However, I just realized this did not include, these projects in the planning stage have actually occurred. So We have the parking garage at Nebraska and Nevada, that's another 6 million, so now we're at 73. The east-west streets on phase 3, so now we're at 93 million. A1A lane configuration and complete streets, 12 million, and then we're currently in the midst of phase 4 of the streetscape, which is Harrison to Magnolia, and that's another 30 million. So we've been very busy on the beach. And here's a picture from many, many years ago. I think it has a date, I'm gonna say like probably 19 of Joan.
1925, and that's the corner of Johnson Street.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Joan.
The Tangerine Tea Room, right? Isn't it the Tangerine Tea Room?
Oh, I thought you were talking about what Joan and I are wearing today. Okay. Well, we'll skip over to 1983. Some of us remember this, some of us do not. This is actually before I moved here.
That looks like the Sheldon on the right.
And here's a picture from 2002. 2002, before the knee wall, before, and it's just the sand coming up on the broad walk. Oops, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there. Oops. Okay, so the broad walk renovation, we have the jogging path, we have the bicycle lane, we have the pedestrian promenade, and then we have the cafe zone. These are some pictures of when the broad walk was under construction. Charter Park and Garfield's Garage. And then I'm going to skip over, there were many, oops, let me go back, oops, there we go. So that laundry list of projects, I just kind of extracted some photos of some of them, obviously, not all of them. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. What happened to the, just south of Sheridan, there's a little plaza with a restroom that used to have tables sitting out there, and
It's a county,
that's county.
yes, it's a county. Oh, you're on the intercoastal side.
Because if you look for somewhere to sit, there's nothing, really no place to go.
That's the county's property.
Or,
Right.
yeah.
So, right now, we are on the last phase of the streetscape on the beach. Does anyone here, by a show of hands, does anyone live on the beach? Oh, so you know. You know. Do you live in phase 4 or, I'm sorry.
At the summit, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not an easy situation. Because as you can imagine, the other phases took place in areas that were not as congested, did not have the number of high-rise buildings and residents, and it wasn't easy, but it was easier. Phase 4 is the most challenging phase because the number of residents in the area and making sure that we're accommodating them. So when we talk about the streetscape, we're really looking at the street itself, the undergrounding of the overhead utilities, the lighting, the landscaping, and resiliency elements and strategies. So that stormwater mitigation, flood mitigation, and also raising of the road and what we call harmonization to each property, which you on the beach know what we're talking about. So we have to make sure that you don't have the road this high and then your property that low. It has to be harmonized. And everyone has to agree to do it. And if you don't agree, it would be quite a nightmare for the private property owner. So now, interestingly enough, we're we're estimated to complete this project in 2028. But, right, the CRA sunsets in 2027. But what I didn't mention earlier is that for capital improvement projects, when we schedule and start the execution of a capital improvement project, we have the money in the bank. We know the money's going to be there. I'm going to simplify this. And because it's for capital, we are allowed to carry that money over so that it may be used the following year. It's a carryover for capital improvement only. So the money is set aside. So even though the CRA will have sunset, the money to complete the project is there for the city to complete.
But just for 1 year?
It can carry over. I have to look into how many years, and maybe Commissioner Blattner may know how many years. No, he doesn't, but that's okay. I can look into it. Is it 3 or 4? 3 years? Yeah, I think it's more than 1 year, so we're gonna say, let's just say 3 years, because things happen, right? I mean, what if there's look what happened with COVID, and who would have ever thought? Things get delayed. Yes, sir?
Is the city setting up a mechanism for spending the CRA money when there is no CRA?
Yes, that's all in our transition plan. So that money is segregated and can only be spent for this project or capital improvement. So, and the city will take over, and it might be the same people that you've been working with. There's a very good chance that we're all kind of transitioning into our positions at the city. I happen to be the only one who is split, quite frankly, right now, but the intention is for someone like myself to only work for the city after the CRA sunsets. So yes, everything is in place so that the project just doesn't stall or stop 90% completing. So these might be some familiar.
Question.
Yes, sir.
One thing I think wasn't addressed, that you're showing these pictures, is the impact on the sewer system. Right now, the sewage treatment plant, there's all kind of money going into deep wells, and the place still stinks, the golf course, the flowers, and all that sewage from hundreds of apartments, I don't think it's been, CRA has to help the sewer system.
Well, I do want to point out that let's think about the CRA as a funding mechanism, not as a funding mechanism. So it's a bank account, and the staff makes recommendations, and similar to the mayor and the commissioners approve the recommendations. However, the CRA, we work under the same guidelines as anywhere else in the city for projects. So yes, there's more of an impact as far as utilities. And utilities is a major part of any development project, whether it's in the CRA or outside of the CRA. So this undergrounding, this is all utility work. Upgrading the utilities that the CRA is paying for, that this area has not had the type of investment that occurred downtown. Obviously, it's all connected, but the utility work had to be done and upgraded because whether it's old, whether it's higher usage, the ground has to be opened and these things have to be upgraded. But you do have a very valid point. Whenever a project in the city, outside the CRA, inside the city CRA, of course it has to be vetted and the engineers have to do what they do, utilities, every department is involved to make sure. And then of course you have the building code, the Florida building code. So it's not isolated to the CRA or the city. Their Department of Environmental Protection, every government entity basically has their hands on every project, every development. So, but this is what we're looking at on the beach, the excavation, trenching, existing conditions, compaction, and structures installation. And this is what's going on the beach as far as the undergrounding of, improving of utilities and undergrounding of the overhead. This is a rendering of Madison Street and what it will look like. Now, I'm just going to go back. That is Harrison. I'm not sure what street, maybe. I'm sorry, I don't have the address, but this is the current, what currently exists, as opposed to something like that.
So Surf Road's gonna have that brick all the way up Surf Road?
Surf Road already does. That was done when the Broadwalk. So Surf Road, Surf Road, maybe south it doesn't. South it doesn't, but north it does. And then we have the A1A, undergrounding of overhead utilities. And that's a rendering. Oops, can you go back?
I'm sorry, there's a
Yeah.
I recognize it.
So the project limits Hollywood Boulevard to southern city limits, 2 miles long, undergrounding of overhead utilities and streetscape beautification, the widening of concrete medians and enhanced landscape, sidewalk restoration and enhanced landscape, and the Sharrow outer lane, which is the bike. Yeah, the bike, the Sharrow, Sharrow, that's the name for the bike lane, that's shared with the vehicle, the car, I should say.
I call them death lanes.
Yeah, it's a very skinny tire on that bicycle too.
Yeah. I be on that sidewalk, those people are in the over. Well,
So-
they have a right way.
Just some
I'd be careful, I don't know that.
development projects on the beach that we know, obviously in Margaritaville. And then we have Sky Harbor, Diplomat Landing. And those are the ones I included. There are others, but I just wanted to put a smattering in the presentation. Now, because the beach CRA, quite frankly, has been wildly successful in increasing the tax base, it was determined that 25% of the TIF that the beach CRA collects would be given back to the taxing authorities. Okay, so instead of reinvesting 100% of the TIF, it was determined that 25% of it would be extracted and given back to the city, given back to the county, and given back to Children's Services. So, and still allow the CRA to continue with its planned capital improvements. So as, just to give a little snapshot, what this is we're looking at a return to the city of 7 million, we'll say about $6.5 million to $7 million based on this graph, okay? That goes back to the city. The county, we'll just say for 2025, we're looking at, $4.8 million to give back to the city. And then Children's Services, for argument's sake, we'll say about 400. $100,000 that this CRA trust fund gives back to the taxing authorities because we've been very successful on the beach. For what you can say, well, that would have happened anyhow, highly unlikely because it hasn't happened in other beachfront communities. Or you can say, well, it's a lot of money, a lot of public money, a lot of public improvements have been made. That has increased that tax base. You know, I'm really surprised no one's asked me about the budget. No one wants to know. They're all very polite. So once again, major capital projects, Broadwalk, Surf Road, Water and Sewer, East-West Streetscape, State Road A1A, Beach Renourishment, the Garfield Parking Garage, Toronto Parking Garage, Toronto Park, the Hollywood Boulevard Bridge, Broadwalk Access Management, we have artificial coral reefs also. And we have another one. So we've funded artificial decorative coral reefs. If anyone dives, does anyone dive here? No? Scuba? Oh. One diver. Okay. Scuba? Anyone like scuba diving? Just not scuba diving, snorkeling. Snorkeling? Yep. Okay. Well, we do have a near-shore reef that we have 4 locations for a near-shore reef, which will be deployed on the 22nd of this month, matter of fact.
Oh.
Yes.
Where's that?
Where? Okay, we have 4 different locations. I know we have one, I want to say off Keating Park. I'm going to have to get that information for some reason. I can't remember off the top of my head. We have 2 on the north end and 2 further south. And I can give you my card and, or I can take your information and email you the locations. So they're lovely. They're decorative. They're shaped like mermaids. They're shaped like an octopus. All different marine biology, marine shapes. You know, some they said he was a merman, which I thought was a little unusual, but he's holding the Triton. So. All different statues, in addition to modules, which are just grow the coral reef. So, and I apologize, I don't have that on the tip of my fingers. The Broadwalk LED lights, the Keating Park, also we turtle lighting. A lot of money has been invested into public turtle lighting. The flap gates and flooding mitigation pumps. Yes, ma'am.
How about them flat gates?
How about those flap?
I've been hearing they're not working, that's what I'm hearing.
Well, we fund the flap gates, so I can look into this status of the flap gate and why the flap gate is not working. And then, of course, the public restrooms.
May I ask
Oops.
one?
You? Yes, of course.
And I'm not sure what I heard. When you said LED lights in Keating Park, those are going to be the turtle friendly, I don't know how to say it.
The LED lights on the Broadwalk were the ones that were inserted into the wall of the Broadwalk, okay, the knee wall. The turtle lighting are all the other public, the lights on the beach have to be compliant. So we have invested significant funds into ensuring that the lights on the beach are opaque or significantly shaded on the east side. Yes. Yes, sir.
Question on taxes.
Oops. Yes, sir?
There's a beach tax. If you buy a soda and you take it out of it, where does that money go? To the CRA? Does it go into any public improvements?
That's not for the CRA, that's actually, I think you're referring to Margaritaville, has an additional tax. That is separate, and I would have to get additional information on that, but it's not a CRA tax.
Well, it's supposed to be public improvement, everything from garbage to fixing the boardwalk, I thought.
No, not for that. The CRA does not tax additional. It's the same tax that you would pay if a CRA was in your neighborhood. I don't know if you live on the beach, but you don't pay any more. There's no additional. It's not an assessment. It's not a business improvement area. It is the same taxes, we just take a percentage of those those ad valorem taxes that would typically go to those other taxing authorities and put them into a fund to reinvest. So it's not an additional fee. Yes, sir.
I used to oversee the special improvement districts in New Jersey and master planning for Connecticut. What's the relationship between the projects and everything that was done under the CRAs and the city's master plan? The current plan is unavailable, and the other thing just says, hey, coming in 2050, for 2050, a new master plan. So the development that was done, how did it fit into?
It would have to, because the CRA is a dependent agency of the city of Hollywood. So it's not, it hasn't seceded from the city, it's not separate. It's easy to think of the CRA, even though it's governed under the Florida state statutes of what we can and can't do. But I think one of the easier ways to think of the CRA as an enterprise fund, so an enterprise fund, by the way, is like parking and utilities, self-sustaining funds. So if you get a parking ticket, theoretically, it goes into the parking division's bank account, and it's almost like a private little business within the city. So utilities and parking are two examples of enterprise funds where they're theoretically self-sustaining. So the CRA similarly, so they have, anything that happens in the CRA is just like anywhere else in the city. The CRA is just a funding mechanism.
But theoretically, all of that development that was assisted by the CRAs was all part of the extensive, I guess, development that must have been in the master plan that I can't see for what was going to happen for downtown and for the beach.
Right, well, the CRA plans are available on our website. As the master plan for the city's master plan is available, and if you want, I could.
No, I'm just saying, their site is down.
Oh,
So try to overlook and see what the master plan site is. It's having a technical problem.
okay. Well, we know it's out there, it's just maybe there's a glitch of some kind.
Nobody ever reads them anyway, but.
The other thing is, I do want to point out that not all of these projects receive CRA funding. So when we say that CRAs stimulate investment, it doesn't mean we're giving them funding.
How do you stimulate?
By improving the area and making it more attractive to invest. So, especially in the case of the estate companies with the Celeste projects, these projects didn't receive funding from the CRA. They decided to assemble the property, purchase the property, and develop the property without the assistance of the CRA. Matter of fact, they're actually going to work on the sidewalks on 20th Avenue and as a contribution. Yes, Steve?
So, the Broadwalk, it's not that broad. And I'm seeing more and more people using Surf Road for pedestrian and bikeways.
Well,
But none of the businesses along the Broadwalk seem to care about the appearance of the west side of their properties, except Senor Frogs is the first one that I've seen that actually has a main entrance, and then there's one bar at the Caribbean Hotel. I was wondering if the CRA is encouraging, because Surf Road, quite frankly, that is the definition of blight currently on Hollywood Beach.
and that's an issue of code enforcement, quite frankly, because if a business is not maintaining the area, especially if they have an outdoor cafe permit, they need to maintain that area. The CRA, we're not regulators, of course we do encourage, but we kind of have to stay in our lane. Remember, we only have those 9 things that we're legally allowed to do. Now, before those 9 things were approved, we were allowed to do other things, and quite frankly, I used to oversee 2 code enforcement officers and work very closely with them and say, over there, over there, over there. And also, I prefer to speak with the property and business owner first and have them take a step back and look at their property and say, how is this possibly okay with you? You know, and usually they comply. But we do, the city, as far as code enforcement, it's a process. It takes longer than any of us want, especially if it's our neighbor who has the violation. Because here we are doing all this work to improve the property value and make it look better. And when you have a business or a property owner who's hurting the value of their properties, their neighbor's property, right? Something has to be done, and usually that's regulatory in nature. So code enforcement is called in. And Hollywood Connect is an app that anyone can use. I use it a lot of times I just shoot emails out to code enforcement saying with a picture, I'll see something, but we're all, as residents, I think it only helps if we do as much as we can to keep our city beautiful. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, in reference to that, I mean, a lot of the code enforcement officers will give you their card to call. I don't know if they still are, but ours did. But the Hollywood Connect, I have found if you use that and you add pictures to it, I know it's technically not supposed to be faster, but it seems like it gets
It works really well. You know what? There's nothing quite like a paper trail, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing quite like a paper trail to get the job done, right? Because if you call somebody, it's very easy. We're getting text messages, phone calls, emails, getting stopped in the street. But if you document something, especially with a photo, it's like every picture tells a story. A photo is worth 1,000 words. We can go on and on. It helps. I do it all the time, not even in my capacity, but just as a human being. I don't want to see something that is hurting the place I live in. Right. Anybody else?
Thank you.
No?
Dennis?
Oh, I'm going to interrupt myself, okay? Because, is anyone curious about what the CRA budget is? Nobody?
Yeah, when they asked earlier, you
Oh,
said I cover it.
Oh, I did? Okay. I'm so sorry. Okay, very quickly. So, annually, well, does anyone want to take a guess? No? Karen?
$6 million.
Okay. The downtown CRA budget is approximately $16 million. Okay, a year. However, because of our planned capital improvements, we have a carryover. So this year, it's about $27 million. The beach budget, and this is all public information. Everything is public. Everything is public because we're a government entity. That number has increased, as you can imagine, because this is just a portion of the ad valorem taxes in a very small area. And I moved here in 2004, and downtown Hollywood looked very different. And I have seen the changes, and obviously, remember, homesteaded property and commercial property doesn't have restrictions as far as taxes. It increases. It doesn't have the restriction that homesteaded property has. So those taxes go up, CRA budget goes up, and the city general fund obviously goes up. Now, for the beach. After returning the money, the 25%, of the TIF to the city, county, and children's services, the beach budget is $53 million.
All right.
And with the carryover, it's approximately $87 million. But anyone who lives on the beach knows the work that's going on, and you saw the numbers. So, yes, sir.
This is in no way a comment on saving bail days, but I have to ask the question since we're at this meeting. How has the CRA at all been involved in issues having to do with the history
As far as historic preservation, I will tell you that as long as I've worked at the CRA, the director and it's really the board of the CRA as acting, this commission, the mayor and the commissioners acting as the board. So as far as embracing historic preservation and elements, if you look at Hollywood Boulevard, you will see elements of the streetscape that strongly resemble the 20s, even the 5 globe bulbs, the street lights. We're always trying to find ways to put a spotlight on that history, especially with architecture. Now, Hollywood Boulevard, there are, Hollywood Boulevard between Young Circle and 21st Avenue is on the National Register of Historic Places. So now the city really has the handle on historic preservation. Once again, the CRA is really that pool of money that is invested. So we're not regulators. However, we have strongly supported historic preservation. Matter of fact, when the CRA was allowed to host events, our signature event was Vintage South Florida, which was a celebration of history and architecture. And yes, Karen.
We also have in every dome the map with all of the plaques that were put on.
Oh, right, that's another thing. Right, we spearheaded a project to acknowledge historic properties on Hollywood Boulevard with bronze plaques on buildings and and downtown, so people can take a tour and see a picture of what the building used to look like and a little history. So yes, the CRA has been very pro when it comes to historic preservation. Sometimes, unfortunately, we all find ourselves in a place that something can't be saved, and that's not the CRA making the decision. It's really the building department when something's a life safety issue. Oh, are we ready for the raffle? Oh, sorry.
Thank you.